Well, here we go again, Mr. Brian Ventura. Episode 8.
Kia ora.
Where are you calling in
Episode
from?
8.
Oh, he's poolside. Look at that. Just like
I'm poolside.
Boom.
Yep. Well, I was literally in Otago, Queenstown a few hours ago. So we're now at the Blockchain New Zealand pad, poolside.
Very nice. And have you been keeping the benches of Queenstown warm for us as we gear up towards another big event in 2026?
Definitely keeping them dust-free because we'll need many more after a successful inaugural conference 2 months ago.
Yep.
We've been busy, but before we get into all of our hard work, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brian Ventura. I'm a partner at Hamilton Locke, a lawyer specializing in fintech and crypto. I'm also deputy chair of Blockchain New Zealand. This handsome man next to me is Trevor Topfer. He's CEO and founder of Avatars Global, and he's also executive director of Blockchain New Zealand.
Nice to not meet any of you, but thank you for listening and enjoying the show. Today's going to be I say it every time, today's going to be a big one, but it really is. We took us a little bit of finagling to get this guest on. Yep. I have heard him referred to recently as the busiest man in crypto right now. I'm sure there'd be a few people out there that would probably take him to task over that, but I have no reason to doubt that our guest today is probably the busiest man in crypto right now. And I'm interested to hear from him where he is, what he's been doing, and just what is going on in the world. It feels to me, Brian, I don't know, maybe we're just a little bit rose-tinted glasses or something, but it feels like there's regulation popping up in every jurisdiction right now, and the world is going crypto mental. Is that kind of what you feel?
I think so, right? And definitely this, our esteemed guest company, they're huge, one of the biggest companies in this space in the world, and no doubt they have their finger on the pulse on everything across multiple jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. But definitely it's exciting for New Zealand as well. We've got some updates on that, but also it seems like overseas there's so much happening in the policy and regulation space.
Yeah, absolutely. We might leave our audience hanging a little bit as to what the updates are for New Zealand. I know that people will be excited about our recent events down in Parliament House and some of the other bits and pieces that have been going on, but we'll maybe close the show with that news, and we won't dilly around too much longer, and we'll get our guest for today into the mix. So ladies and gentlemen, please go mild for the one and only Mr. David Menz, who is the APAC Policy Lead for Coinbase. That's right, that very one that you wake up screaming its names and go to sleep at night dreaming about. Coinbase, one of the largest players in the space. David, what happened there? There he is. Great to have you on the show, mate. Welcome. Thank you for giving
Welcome.
Up.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Brian. I love the introduction. Busiest man in crypto is probably a bit of a stretch. Lots of builders doing amazing things all across the industry, but you are right. It has been a super busy, quarter, year, sort of 18 months for policy in APAC and around the world. Lots of stuff going on, and happy to dig into any of that as we go. But yeah, definitely wouldn't take any of the spotlight around the people building in this industry. They are what we all sort of walk on the shoulders of.
Yeah, this, I don't know what number it is for you, but this is number 2. I kind of caught on the tail end of the third one, the third run ago. But this is definitely my second kind of taste of a bull run. And this time it feels like the builders are really the ones that are winning, not so much the traders, because of all this institutional flow. What's your take? Are we in a bull run? Has it really kicked in yet? Is this as big as it's going to get? What are your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I mean, it's always really hard to sort of separate price action, how people feel price action, and then like what is actually happening on the underside. I think the big thing that sort of stands out for me, if we talk about cycles like everyone kind of does in the traditional 4-year cycle phase, this cycle, as we call it that, like it feels like the time where the tech is ready. we're talking about a bunch of different platforms that offer, under 1 cent, under 1 second transaction finality. That is huge. That is not something that we had previously. Everyone knew what the potential was. Everyone knew that blockchain had the ability to deliver these amazing outcomes, but it wasn't quite there yet. Now we're there. We've been there for 3 or so years, and we're past the point of discussing whether it's possible, having the naysayers saying, well, I don't really see, what's the point of a ledger that's not just Excel. We're well past that. And so I think that that's what we're seeing. We're seeing really cool amounts of adoption. Everyone is trying to walk through the doors of the people who have been in this space for an amount of time, building out solutions for them. And we're just really seeing that adoption moment across the world, from the institutional side, from the other side. That's leaving a lot of price action that we may have seen in previous cycles to the wayside. But I think that that's a positive. It is because we are where the potential for this was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you say, the technology's finally kind of feels like it's ready, right? This is the dream we've been selling for the last sort of 5 years. It's coming, trust me, bro. And now here it is. And there's definitely a few people who are probably feeling fairly vindicated, given the checkered history of the last definitely the last bear market has been pretty brutal, and it's taken no prisoners. It's definitely was a lot more brutal than the cycle before. But yes, it feels like that there's some vindication. I certainly feel like it's a great time to be in and around crypto and blockchain, and my inbox blows up on the daily. I'm sure yours does too. And Bryan is traveling all over the world. He's like a seagull with a chip. He's pretty happy at the moment. Things going very well. So look, normally where we kick this thing off, David, is just to give people a bit of an insight into how you managed to find yourself where you are today. Because I always feel like everybody's got their own kind of interesting crypto moment, or what we call a red pill moment, and where they were. And it's like the first time I logged into the internet. I can remember it very, very clearly, or the first time I played my mum's piano and knew that music was always going to be a thing for me. It's one of those moments, right? So I'd love to hear, what's your red pill moment, David? Where were you? What happened? And take us back to where it all began for you.
So it wasn't my red pill moment, but it's the thing that kind of led into it. So I was a professional poker player. I dropped out of university when I was a lot younger, and Texas Hold'em had sort of taken over the world. And I spent about 6 years doing that, which was a lot of fun, mostly online, super math nerd type stuff. But I remember the day that Bitcoin went to $1, because that was on the 2+2 forums. I remember seeing it in one of the sort of forums, and it was Bitcoin went to $1, and people were like, what the hell is this? That type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I was chatting to my friend who was also a poker player, but is also an incredibly successful high frequency trader, running one of the largest shops in Australia now. And he was against it. He was like, David, it's a scam. It makes no sense. But there was something that stuck in my mind. I was like, wow, this is the concept of private money that could actually be useful. It's not sort of required to be trusted on by anyone. And it requires adoption, and that's its own thing. It is money is a myth, but it made me think about that. Money is just a myth. What are these things? Cycle through to 2014. I'm at uni again after sort of leaving the poker space and realizing that I probably need a job doing a finance and economics degree. And I started writing my papers and theses on it. And just got really, really into the concept of, decentralized money, private styles of money, and the difference between government-issued money and private money, and what the upsides and downsides of both of them are. And then I got a job, and I put my first paycheck into it. So that's kind of where it happened. It was kind of a slow process, but that's kind of where it all started, kind of in that Bitcoin, why are we here private money thing. And then at that time when I did sort of first put my first paycheck into it, that was when Ethereum was taking off. It was before the Homestead release, which sort of allowed for the smart contracts. It was kind of getting out of alpha mode. And that was super exciting as well. You're saying, hey, we've got private money and we have this new tech platform that could change the world. Very easy to jump on board at that point in time. So yeah, that's kind of what got me into crypto and has sustained me sort of ever since.
Wow. And now you've got one of the hottest seats in one of the hottest companies. So you're obviously, all in, full degen, and
Yeah.
it's great to see. How did you end up in policy though, mate? Like, did it's not the normal way in, especially for a former pro poker player. I would have thought that you'd be definitely on the hustle side, not so much on the litigious side. How did you end up there?
Yeah, it's as much of a surprise for me as it is to you. I did a finance degree, very much focused on trading and looking into just mathematical structures of markets. But I was an economist working at the securities regulator, and the ICO boom happened, and there kind of wasn't anyone that was particularly interested in it. And I was seeing all of these ICOs happening, and I was saying, "Hey, like this is super interesting." I was in charge of looking at emerging risks, and so that's like new technologies, different things that like maybe could be considered as like technology that we should be looking into and keeping an eye on. And so you sort of write little pieces in reports to just make sure that we're sort of checking up on it. And then all of a sudden it was like, "Hey David, like can you come and consider doing more and more and more on this?" So it's ended up being more than half of my job, and then we ended up setting up a working group on it. And it's all well, and it was great. Like ASIC gave me like a huge opportunity, gave me a lot of responsibility there, but ultimately they are a regulator, and I was very passionate about like the technology and the applications. And so I decided it was time to kind of move on. You do get a little bit pigeonholed in trying to put everything into rules and regulations, especially you think about that time. Everything was super exciting. So many experiments were going on. Everything was moving faster than you could even keep up with. So that was kind of my first sort of bout at policy. Went sort of back, did more private stuff, back into the trading, more like my training side of things, training, derivatives, risk, stuff like that. But then Treasury put out a job saying that they were going to look at like, writing proper regulations for crypto, not just relying on like the financial services regulations. And I just thought to myself, wow, this has to be done right. And I really need to be a part of that to make sure that like people really understand how these things are used and the opportunities. So there's like a good sort of balancing factor. I was lucky enough to join an amazing team. There are some serious, like absolute like people who know DeFi inside and out, people who know smart contracts inside and out in that treasury team. And so I wasn't just the only person that walked in passionate about it. And so I think that that's sort of like, landed Australia in like a reasonably good place. We're seeing some changes now. But that's how I got into policy. And then, as you sort of push for things and you want things to move a little bit faster, you look to the other side of the fence because ultimately the government has to have buy-in for like any rules to sort of make it to the table. And Coinbase is very pro pushing to make sure that like rules and regulations are good, but also that they come at some point in time so the economies that like need them can actually benefit from the technology.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at now, right? We're starting to see all of that hard work. I say I describe it as 6 months ago I couldn't even get a response to an email, and now I'm getting DM'd by regulators and politicians, and it's like there's a hell of a lot of attitudinal shift in our part of the world just in the last 6 months or so. So I think
It sounds like your journey, you've come at it from multiple angles, and you really understand not just the technological opportunity of blockchain, but also you understand how regulators and policymakers think. It sounds like a perfect storm for what you're doing now at Coinbase. We'd love to hear more about what you're doing in your current role.
Yeah. So Coinbase is, we're a really large exchange globally. We're the largest listed exchange, and we're kind of very focused on, being the most trusted, most compliant exchange. Like you want like somewhere that your mom and your grandmother can, buy crypto and invest in it. And Coinbase tries to like make sure that we're the place that can happen. Like trusted, safe, well-regulated. But, along with being well regulated comes some growing pains around the world. There's always been this idea of where do you put crypto? How do we regulate it? It kind of looks like financial products, but it's not really a financial product. Is it even property? But the trading kind of looks like financial products. And so there's a lot of growing pains that happen there. And Coinbase is really focused on making sure that governments around the world get that right. Governments are, for the most part, they're really well-meaning, and they do really want to achieve good outcomes for both their citizens, but also for innovation in the economy. But they can't know what they don't know. And Coinbase is kind of there, and the policy team is there to make sure that, hey, they do know what the opportunity is. They do know what type of settings would be good, what wouldn't work, what are fantastic to port over from that financial services regime, and what actually needs to be changed a little bit. And so that's what I kind of really love about Coinbase, that focus on policy for good, not just lobbying to not be regulated, not just lobbying to get yourself out of it or get tax breaks or that type of thing. That's a type of lobbying that's good and interesting, and you always have to have both sides at the table. But Coinbase is definitely lobbying for right-sized regulation, protection for consumers, and just an industry that can provide so much for the world to be given a little bit of space to do that. So yeah, that's kind of what we're focused on globally. Obviously, it's different in every sort of region across APAC. We're talking about a completely, every single country is at a different stage on their journey. So it's a super interesting field over this side of the world. And, learning to sort of speak to politicians, meeting them where they are in their journey, because everyone is at a different stage on that journey, and making sure that it's understandable and approachable.
Yeah, I was reading an article. Got a feeling Steve Vallis shared it, but I could be wrong. Fact checkers are going to get me. But it's APAC is now the fastest growing region globally for blockchain and crypto technology. So I found that to be particularly interesting, given how much attention and I guess how much you hear, how much share of voice the UAE and the US tends to have, and we sort of hear about how much is going on in those jurisdictions and how valuable and important, how much faster they're moving, and all of the exciting stuff that's going on there. And then when you look at the numbers, actually it's APAC that's growing, that's outgrowing all other regions. I'd love to get your kind of lens on that. Why do you think the APAC region is really going hard in this space right now?
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting, and it's a combination of sort of both ends of the spectrum. So the easy end of this spectrum, the one that kind of equates a little bit closer to that Dubai US sort of conversation, is high net wealth individuals and institutions truly understand the value of this technology now, and they want to be part of it. So they're finding ways to invest, they're finding ways to be part of the markets, and they're finding ways to how does this fit into my family office strategy of asset allocation? Are there venture bets available? Are there core positions that I need to own? So that type of thing is big. And if we think about that, that's your Hong Kong, your Singapore, some really established Australian wealth professionals, et cetera, that sort of upper middle class set of countries that are really there for the asset side of things. They see the technology, they understand financial markets especially, and they understand that they need to be part of it. And then there's the other side of the thing, the other side of the spectrum, which is, hey, I'm from a developing economy. I maybe have left that developing economy to find opportunities elsewhere, and I want to send money back, or I want to find a way to make money in this new industry that doesn't have any traditional gatekeepers. It's not sort of bound by my geographical location or the university that I have. I can just come, participate, and build. And that other end of the spectrum is what really, really drives a huge amount of this innovation. You're talking India. It's the most amount of developers in the world. If you look at the innovation that's coming out of the Malaysian builders, it's crazy. They're unbelievably good. And some of the key products that you see being developed at the moment that have been used by most of us this cycle, they come out of Malaysia. Vietnam is a relatively similar place. So these people are looking at the two other things. How do I participate and make money in this new globalized world in a technology that doesn't just push me out because of my accent or my qualification or whatever? I can provide value. And then, hey, actually this technology has a lot of use. I can send money cheaply fast, without all of these like guardrails that I need. I don't need to walk into a bank that might be a fair way away and then go through a KYC process with someone who maybe is like discriminatory against them because I'm from the wrong village or from the wrong background or whatever. It allows them to achieve normal economic outcomes that we take for granted day to day, and just like have them as part of their life. So kind of like two broad ends of the spectrum, but that's the thing about this technology. It's super cool. It's super exciting. And that's why I think APAC is like, it's the growing region because it hits both of those things.
Yeah, interesting.
I love that. I love that insight. And you can see kind of the thesis that, adoption's driven for different reasons. And, there are some jurisdictions where the monetary system could be a little broken or it could be archaic, and this is opportunity for new financial rails to disrupt it. When I visit my grandmother in the Philippines and she says, grandson, we're going to go to the bank, I already know that's going to be a 3-hour, 4-hour, experience, just waiting in line, versus, making payments online digitally through stablecoins where it's just much faster. Stablecoins has been probably one of the most common things in our podcast the past few months. Where do you see stablecoins in the APAC region?
Yeah, I think, the adoption is good as it is. I think that everyone's still very much reliant on those sort of US dollar sort of focused ones. Different reasons for that. If you think about, different inflation rates around the region and what you're sort of thinking of as your denomination currency, like that's real. But ultimately, like people do prefer not to have to think about that. They want to pay their bills. They want to earn money in the thing that they have to pay their bills in. It makes life a lot easier. And so we're seeing a little bit more of that. We've obviously had some recent releases of Australian dollar stable coins. There's a Singaporean sort of set of stable coins as well. And hopefully we're going to see more stable coins, or that's my hope, that we see more stable coins in people's native currencies. So they have that option to choose. They can use them sort of every day. They can roll them up into some other asset, whether that be US dollars or whether that be Bitcoin or something like that, just so they have access, choice, and the ability to use like what many people in the developed world have been using as like a modern financial system for a long time. So that's where I'm hoping things are leading. I think that you will see some exciting things. I know there are development teams from protocols that are like out there looking for business development opportunities in all of these different currencies, because that's adoption. You want 1 billion people on chain, like it is these people.
Yeah, I sort of describe it as a restructuring of the global financial system, right? That's what's happening if we really want to cut to the chase. And so I find it, you talk about the opportunity of both sides, and I really related to that because I spent a lot of time talking with people in the region, and it's Vietnam, it's Cambodia, it's these smaller, often forgotten nations that are typically developing that have gone all in. They've seen the opportunity and gone, well, we can export financial products to the world. There's nothing stopping us. And there's almost like this blue ocean of opportunity. And I bang on about that a lot for New Zealand as New Zealand's opportunity. And it's not just in the payments layer as well, right? Like blockchain is, coins or tokens or cryptos or stablecoin, whatever you want to call out, are an application of a technology, right? But there's an almost infinite number of other applications of that technology that's going to be developed over the next few years, that's going to replace a lot of outdated systems. Do you think that the way that the current financial system is being reset by this sort of application of blockchain, where do you see it going? Do you think this is the first of many? What's next in your mind? Like, what are you passionate about when you start thinking about the size of the blockchain opportunity beyond just what your kind of day-to-day is in and around coins?
Yeah. I mean, the financial markets opportunity is probably the sort of most well played out one. Everyone can kind of see where it's going. So you're talking about the democratization of capital and the access to investments. That's huge. That's really important. There are many people around the world that haven't been able to buy shares in NVIDIA in any way, shape, or form. And like, to be honest, if you hadn't been able to do that, you haven't been able to keep up with global wealth creation. So that's a big one. That's super interesting. But I think because we all know where it's going, like I'm not actually super excited about that. Like I'm kind of like, yep, done. Like just wait a handful of years. At the moment, like I'm really interested in various things like the digital physical sort of realm. Like how do we create like consumer experiences that sort of breach both digital and physical? I think that's super exciting. We had a Stand with Crypto sort of pitch fest earlier today, and there were a couple of people working on that. Amazing sort of technology and like really cool experiences that can happen. And I am like really into the concept of DePIN, especially from the Australian sort of side of things. Australia is a massive country attempting to develop like standard utility services for such a large country with like limited data is really hard. Someone in Canberra like writes a report, they like have a look at the ideas and they're like, oh, we probably should put a tower here, 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 and here, and here. And then the private companies do that. And then there's the requirement to cover everyone or very, very close to everyone. And it's hard to work out how to do that in an efficient manner. DePIN has the ability to like basically create demand functions that ensure that, those things are met as they should be rather than as we think that they need to be. So I'm super excited of DePIN, super excited of physical, digital. I mean, there's so much available to talk about. I think the other thing is the agentic sort of payment. So AI speaking to AI to do things for us without us necessarily having to interact. And I think that crypto is like a core underlying thing in regards to how do they transfer value between each other.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, Trevor's company as well, Advertise Global, they're in the NFT business, AI business. And you're right, like blockchain goes beyond spot trading or derivatives or financial markets. It goes to provenance of unique digital assets, digital identity, right?
Yep. We're looking at entertainment, what the future of entertainment is. We're making big bets on that. I have a running thesis that when AI automates us, a lot of us out of work, entertainment will become a primary kind of pursuit for an enormous. I mean, it kind of is already. If you take your work life out, it's mostly entertainment that's left and sleep, right? So if you scale that out, I think that there's going to be an enormous amount of growth and development and sort of exciting stuff that's happening in that space. And I think you're right. We're really interested in where AI and blockchain kind of interrupt and augment and allow us to do interesting things in that space. So, yeah, I very much agree. Like this sort of morphing between the digital and the physical is really interesting, and how we consume not only entertainment and products and things, but what experiences we have, how our identity plays into all of that. Like, people think we're getting a little bit too out of control and weird and stuff when we start talking about digital identity, and you get all the tin hat kind of guys that come in and say, oh, it's going to be the government control of you and everything. But I actually think we're about to go on a massive journey as a species with identity. Like the concept of identity is going to become so much more interesting to us all, because we sort of don't really give it a second thought. You've got your driver's license and your passport, and then you've got your Facebook page and your Instagram page, but you never really stop and think about how much of your world is actually associated with and controlled by and almost relies upon the construct of your identity. It's just not something we've really explored yet, I don't think, at scale. And I think that's what's coming. So yeah, digital identity is a really interesting one for me as well.
That's right. I mean, with your role at Coinbase, David, you got a good bird's eye view of what's happening in the region from a policy perspective. Trevor and I and the rest of the Blockchain New Zealand team, we work really hard trying to help support the blockchain industry in New Zealand. Tell us about some of the common themes that you're seeing in the different jurisdictions you're talking to, and because we'd love to learn from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a super busy year, and to be honest, the reason why it kind of has been a busy year is because of the new US administration, the new US administration has been very pro this technology and what it can achieve, but also like very focused on there hasn't really been regulation previously. There needs to be right-sized regulation now. So as much as people say, oh, it's deregulation, it's the Wild West, like I actually heavily disagree. This is the first time that crypto will be regulated in the US, rather than people disagreeing on like, you know, how it's regulated and the various court fights. This is like true regulation that will truly regulate both, you know, digital assets in regards to how they're traded on platforms as like digital commodities, but also stable coins as well. So that's kind of kicked off like the world being like, oh, wait, we have to take this seriously. It's definitely happening. And then all of the pressure that's coming from the big institutions for adoption as well is kind of moving that along. So kind of seeing like a couple of different themes in the region. In the region, there are some like jurisdictions that got onto regulation like really early. And they put their regulations in, you know, with very much in mind, like sometimes like, you know, your kind of like Mt. Gox collapse or your FTX collapse, very focused on how to ensure that like consumers are protected, which is like a really, really good government goal, right? And then the other side of it is like, okay, they put them in place, but where did that get them? And so consumers have been like protected really, really well, but they're kind of looking at this new opportunity and realizing that maybe their regulations aren't quite fit for purpose to embrace that opportunity. So we're seeing a bit of a revisiting of those frameworks. I think two to call out, like as really obvious ones, is like Hong Kong and Malaysia. Both of them have regimes. They're relatively sort of localized. It kind of a lot of discussion about like holding assets on shore, making sure that huge amounts are in cold storage, not having retail access or having retail access to only like certain things, really small amounts of like, for example, in Malaysia, tokens that you can get access to, and a really difficult procedure to add any more to that list. And they're kind of seeing, oh, actually, we might have killed the industry a little bit locally. We might be seeing that our settings have been inappropriate. So actually, although people are trying to do the right thing onshore and provide these services under licenses, they're actually being heavily outcompeted by, you know, people who don't care if they're following the law or not and just providing offshore services into that jurisdiction. And so they're saying, oh, wait, we probably need to get these settings like a little bit better. So they're consulting at the moment on how they can open their regimes up and what maybe they need to change to embrace this new opportunity. And then if you look at like other parts of the region that are like sort of at the start of their journey or have had their journey sort of like truncated and paused, I'm thinking Australia, I'm thinking like a little bit New Zealand, and I'm thinking India. They're kind of at the stage where they're like, oh, well, we need to catch up. Like we definitely kind of knew what we were meant to be doing, which is like putting in some base layer of consumer protection. But we need to like then move to the next level. So they're rushing out with their consumer protection. India is like potentially releasing a paper relatively soon on what that should look like. I think it's going to be 100 pages or something like that is like the latest that I've heard.
India have like wild adoption as well. Don't they have like an enormous amount of adoption?
They have an insane amount of adoption. And so it is important. But then it's like looking forward to the future as well. How do we look at you know, the tokenization of real world assets, whether they be like actual physical assets or whether they be financial assets. Like that's an important thing that all of the governments are going to be like scrambling to catch up to, because the US has just said, hey, we know that our laws maybe aren't perfect for this, but we're going to provide relief. And we're going to make it as easy as possible for these things to come on chain, because we know that that's the future. And, you know, although it may not perfectly fit in with financial services law, maybe it not, we're not going to go through a really long rulemaking process. We're just going to find little ways to allow this to happen. And then we'll come back and work out what works and what's not. So that's a clear sort of determined effort to become the leaders in the global space. And we're going to see more and more people trying to catch up to that. The UK has already moved a little bit. They're saying, oh, we're going to assign a digital markets champion. We're going to try and make our sort of set of laws be compatible with the US one as well. And I think that we'll see more and more of that in sort of this side of the world as well. So that's kind of like my sort of tone on what's changing. But every jurisdiction has its own flavor. So that's the super positive side. There's like some less heartening things happening as well.
Are you championing for like some sort of universal standard, right? Like, to me, this is the opportunity. We've learned that all of these different kind of legislative frameworks and structures and standards that exist across the world just impede trade and commerce. We now live in a global economy. Are you kind of championing that? Because to me, that feels really important, that we're all writing this policy right now. Like, the whole world is kind of coming together and going, blockchain, it's a thing we should care about, and how do we deal with it? Is that the opportunity? Is that what you're seeing? Like the ability for us to get global kind of consensus and go, right, this is how globally we're going to deal with this shit. And then we don't have to have all this weirdness going on. We can just get on with it.
Regulatory interoperability.
Yeah.
Look, it's an amazing aspiration. I think reality is always really different. So a lot of what my job is pointing out these things around the world. What works well, what doesn't work well. And trying to usher governments into those, like, places that work a little bit better. So there's like a little bit more interoperability and a little bit more understanding of the opportunity. But realistically, and for good reason, governments are beholden to their citizens. And so every government has a very different set of expectations from their citizens in regards to what, should be done. In the US, you can do things that allow for extreme amounts of free access because that is expected. That is the social compact between the government and its citizens. In other countries, it's not necessarily the case at all. In Singapore, for example, the people look at the government to protect them. And so no one is like super bothered about not being able to gamble in any way, shape or form. Like, that seems like anti-ethical as an Australian. Like, you're going to stop me from like doing what I want with my money. I definitely want to punt on the horses. But like in Singapore, that's just like considered a social good that is provided by the government and like stops bad outcomes for certain citizens and inequality. So like you have to like look at it through the cultural lens and always find from a policy point of view, like, what am I talking to and what are the things that will like resonate with the politicians and policymakers in this region to make sure we get to that outcome as close as possible for this like concept of like global interoperability to like find the good outcomes that like really get the positives from the technology. Which is why it's a super interesting sort of career, this one, because it's just not clear cut ever. And you've got to be thinking on your toes all the time.
And there's this other weird pressure because the tech came first, which, I mean, it always does, but because the tech was global from day one, right? Like, blockchain wasn't something that emerged from
borderless
somewhere, and it was immediately available to the world and immediately a global system that, as you pointed out before, anyone can participate in this. There's no gatekeepers. It's decentralized. And so, I kind of think there's this exercise in folly in not making, as Brian describes it, interoperable legislation, because if you put up roadblocks, whether they be cultural or historical or ideological or whatever they might be, the fucking degens are just going to find a way around it, man. They're just just going to go, I'll just go here and do it this way, right? Like, you don't have that ability to influence it like maybe you once did.
I 100% agree. And this is like, it's a real set of like uncomfortable moments for both like regulators and governments and policymakers. Like, this is something new. It's hard to grapple with. It's hard to understand. It's a journey. It's been going on for a while and we're like slowly getting there, but like you got to break down those walls slowly and show what the reality is. Like, as we said before, like Malaysia and Hong Kong, you put up walls, the walls are pretty leaky. This isn't a dam.
Great
This
point.
is like a sieve. And so if your sieve isn't actually achieving anything, like maybe at least open it to the opportunity.
Yeah,
those are great points. I mean, some of the fundamental truths that Trevor and I and the Blockchain New Zealand team have been kind of hammering home with New Zealand policymakers is the demand is insatiable, right? Like, you're either going to buy, you're either going to buy your crypto locally or buy it offshore. And
like you're not buying it.
yeah. No one's stopping me from buying it.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation, Brian, when with a I don't know, let's just say a parliamentarian of some description, about how the fact that the sun comes up early in New Zealand is a huge factor, and I was like, I'm not sure that is right. I didn't have in my heart to kind of say, well, 24/7 markets is what the norm is in crypto, right? Like you can trade at any time of the day or night. It doesn't matter who comes up first.
Trevor and I, in other episodes, we were talking about how we were up till 3 a.m. during the ICO boom. We were participating in ICOs in 2017. Definitely,
I have no
time doesn't matter.
Anybody that hasn't had that experience where they've had to be up at 4 a.m, they're on a white list for some fucking stupid thing that someone in a Telegram group that they've never met before told them they were going to make a whole lot of money on, and they're in there doing it. Like, if you haven't done that, are you really crypto?
Do you really crypto?
It was a fun time. I remember like reading like 10 white papers a day.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a different time.
GPT then, right? Like, you had to actually read the fucking white paper. Good times. I mean, there's definitely, and you see it everywhere. You must see it way more than me, but you definitely see there's this juxtaposition of old school attitudes and new school kind of mentalities, right, that are just washing up against each other really, really firmly. Because and I kind of sit in both camps. I'm old enough to have come up without any of this, then my red pill moment, and then I went all in, right? I immediately went, more or less, I was like, yeah, this is the future, this is where everything's going to go. Might as well, sooner I get involved with it, the sooner, whatever. And so I've kind of got all of those, what we now sort of think about as the culture or the identity or that sort of degen early crypto kind of attitude, those early Web3 kind of guys. I've been through that as well. So I've kind of understand and relate to all of that, but also have the other hat as well. But it's funny to watch,
it's colliding.
This very, very, very different perspective on what's going on and the power struggles, because we're very quickly figuring out that the old way is not necessarily dominant anymore, right? Like, that's a big shift that I think we're smacking up against.
Yeah, and I think on both sides as well. Like, the sort of thing that I sort of keeps me realizing that, like, while those days were fun and really enjoyable, there really wasn't that many of us. And my mum wants to buy crypto, and I'm glad that like those days are not now, kind of thing, because I wouldn't be able to explain it to my mum. I wouldn't be able to point her to something that's safe as an investment. And so if I think of like that sort of North Star, the majority of people that are embracing blockchain today are not the people that embraced it back then. And so we've got to meet them where they're at, because, the opportunity set is huge, and they do have a lot to gain. And yeah, like we're just like, morphing ourselves into sort of that side of things as well. So yeah, super interesting. Like there's so many stories. I'm sure that we can have beers over that at some stage. But like, I think the future is also really cool as well.
Yeah. I've got way too many monkey pictures.
I've got relatives recently. They're visiting from the Philippines. They're both over 60, both doctors, and they're like, "Hey, Brian, I want to buy some Bitcoin." I'm like, "Well, I don't want to steer you down the wrong path, but you probably want to, unless you're comfortable, like managing your own keys, you probably want to leave it on a really reputable exchange." And so custody is actually, there are the purists like us who believe in self-custody. I presume you are, David. But then also for mainstream adoption, custody is a massive important feature of this industry. Keen to hear your thoughts about the role of custody in real mainstream adoption.
Yeah, I mean, it is super important. Like the best thing about this technology is that you have choice. You've never had choice before, right? So there's different sort of types and times that you would choose custody for different reasons, and different theses of like investments as to why you would choose to have custody and not have custody. But ultimately, like that custody thing is really, really important. We're talking about a set of assets that look a little bit more like assets that we had 200 years ago. Do you hold it? Yes or no? Okay, it's yours or it isn't. Like, that's all that it is. And so like while there's like lots of nuance in between those things, like it is different, it is important, and it's good to have the option. I'd like to sort of highlight the Australian framework that is definitely sort of focused on that as its nexus. Yeah, it's really hard to put all of these things into policy frameworks that make sense, because like we said, like sometimes this looks like financial products, sometimes it doesn't look like financial products, the trading sure as hell looks like it, that type of thing. A lot of those sort of journeys that we went through as humans for quite a long time, and really like the setting of these styles of Corporations Act only over the last like 100 years or so, like we went through all of the tough lessons before, and we're sort of relearning the tough lessons in blockchain as well. But a lot of those lessons can be applied. Like if I'm trusting someone else to do something for me, should I be able to trust them? Yeah, hell yeah. And like, should those people probably have oversight on them? Also true. And that's kind of where Coinbase is. Like, we know that we hold hundreds of billions of dollars of our customers' assets. Should we be regulated? Definitely. Like, that is a really, really big responsibility that we take like super seriously. And everyone in this industry that is holding assets for any of their customers, they should be taking that seriously as well. That's trust. That's both human trust, so like doing the right thing, but also like, doing the legally correct thing as well. So like that side of regulation is really important. And like the Australian government has kind of looked sort of through all of the noise of like what's a financial product, what isn't a financial product, and just said, hey, there's a responsibility here that people are saying that they're achieving, and that's what we're going to build it on. Whether the digital token is a financial product or not, it should still, like the agreement and the trust that is placed from a consumer to that platform should be regulated like financial products are regulated for platforms that like hold them for other people. So I think like it's key. It's good that they're sort of seeing it as policy. It's something that we're going to have to grapple with in like very, very different formats. There's amazing technologies being built like sort of as we speak, and especially over the last like 3 years of like how to do self-custody, with other people, how to have like different types of signing rings, signatures, et cetera, to like make this easier and safer. But like, I love that you get the choice, because we just haven't really had that before. And I think that makes it like, as Trevor was saying, like more portable in a global world. Like it allows us to, live globally, be less reliant on nation states doing correct things. Like we don't have to just fully trust our government anymore, or any particular government anymore.
Or any institution or any company. I mean,
exactly,
is the trust layer, right? So
100%. Like I've been quite lucky to like live my whole life in Australia, but my partner is Argentinian. Like, you have currency devals like effectively every year of her parents' and grandparents' life, where they just lost 80 to 90% of their assets every single time this happened. Like for normal people around the world, these are not fringe things. These aren't events. That's the normal state of things.
Broken money.
Like having the ability to like custody your own form of hard assets, or like even things like financial products, without having to sort of necessarily worry what's going to happen the next day. I think that's a big win for humanity.
Okay.
Yeah, some great points.
I've got a challenging idea, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it, David. So I've been watching the stablecoin movement with a lot of fascination. I think that stablecoins make a lot of sense for institutional adoption. People want to move money on these new rails, on these new networks, because Swift is fucking old and it's broken and it doesn't work so well, right? So stablecoins kind of make sense to help people make sense of all of that. But where do you see stablecoins, given that we've just talked about custody? So to me, a stablecoin is a custodial solution. That's how I look at a stablecoin, right? It's the confidence that there's a buck there for this weird magical internet buck that I'm pushing wherever instantly for less than $1, whatever it is, the transaction. And somewhere there's a real dollar in custody if and when somebody wants to extract it from this value chain that we're moving around. So I wonder, what's the future of stablecoins if custodial solutions become the norm, which is what seems to be happening is people, strangely enough, want those assets that they pay good money for to be protected in some way, right? Like that seems to make a lot of sense. Do we need stable coins in that world?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it comes down to consumer choice. People will choose to denominate in what they want to. But the interesting thing that I find about stablecoins is, as you sort of noted, they're like this weird version that is like, it kind of has like some cash aspects and kind of has like some bank deposit like aspects. So if you think about like the banking system at the moment, you've got these transactions that are always transferred through banks and via intermediaries that way. And that's all completely visible to those banks and intermediaries with like not much look through in between, but like they see everything. All of that is like, custodial and fully custodial. And you've got this cash concept where like I just hand it to you and no one has to be involved. Stablecoins is like kind of somewhere in the middle. There's like an issuer and they have relationships with the people who want to redeem and create like the stable coins, like for origination purposes or redemption purposes. And they have a lot of oversight of all of those relationships. But once the stable coins are kind of like off into the wild, they kind of act a little bit more like cash, right? Like nobody owns them. Most of the people that hold the stable coins don't actually have the ability to redeem them, but they're interacting with them like cash. Relatively similar to cash itself. Theoretically, you can take some money into your central bank and say, hey, I want to redeem this for the liabilities that this is a direct correlation of. You can't actually do that. But like, that's
what a time we could. But then we depegged from gold and it all became just trust me, bro.
So theoretically, like if you look at most central bank charters, you should actually be able to like walk in and redeem that thing for some amount of foreign reserves. That's why they have their balance sheets, etc. And pieces and bits of gold. You can't actually do that as a citizen, but like that's kind of the same concept as stablecoins. Not everyone can redeem a stablecoin, but like we transact on them on the side. So it's interesting. We're melding those two sort of worlds into this new sort of version. Will everyone choose to use all stablecoins? Will they choose to hold their value in stablecoins? Will they choose to constantly transact with them? I don't know, but it's kind of cool because like now you can just kind of do it instantly, fast, and like without permission. So I think that I think that there's like these are things that are old and boring and ported into a new world, but with like new applications and like a larger amount of choice.
Yeah, I think those are good points. And you mentioned remittance, stablecoin. That's a massive use case for remittance. In terms of like your work in policy, what kind of conversations are you having outside of the regulation? What kind of conversations are you having with politicians? Because politicians, they tend to think risk reward, like private markets. The risk can be mitigated through regulation, but then also, what's the reward for supporting this industry? Keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch briefly on that stablecoins thing. So to some politicians, depending on where they are in the world, that idea about remittances is huge, right? Both, out of Australia, for example, or out of Singapore, out of New Zealand, into other countries, or the inside from other countries as well. If I think about it, like, I believe that the average remittance costs somewhere between 7 and 8% globally, but that's like there's a huge spread on what that is, and like you're talking stablecoins being able to do it in like sub 1, even with on and off ramping. So that's a really big deal. And if you think about that in terms from like India, for example, who I believe is 5.84% is the average cost of a remittance. Like you cut that into under 1%. So we like say that we're just dropping off 4% there. You're talking about $4.25 billion into the Indian economy extra every year. They have 125 billion a year. Now we know that those remittances they mostly are just used for household upkeep. So that's a really big deal. So those things with different politicians go down really, really well. That's super tangible, super obvious. Politicians that are a little bit more like in tune with financial markets, they see that like concept of there's a $19 billion a year of efficiency in Australia. for just like back office work in like clearing and settlements, just from like bringing markets on chain. There's like larger opportunities from creating liquidity in assets that like otherwise don't have liquidity. And then, yeah, like if you're talking to someone in healthcare and you talk about like, tracking immutable data that is like shareable, maybe like, is like held in secret with ZK proofs, that type of thing. So like, as we were saying earlier, like this technology applies to everything. And there's so much to offer. So it's really like, I just kind of like meet people where they are, and try and find what they're like looking at. The big thing that is kind of like the topic of discussion at the moment is like stablecoins, as you were saying, but also that like asset tokenization piece, because that's kind of where we're seeing things move so quickly. But not every politician cares about that. They care about things that affect the people in their like jurisdictions, in their like sort of regions. And so yeah, like I'm sure as you guys have found with your advocacy in New Zealand, you kind of like meet them where they are. And if it's like an ag farming community, you talk about like, weather data and provenance and stuff like that.
Supply chains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So conscious of time, I feel like we're kind of nearing the pointy end of this and probably got to start putting a bow on it. So given that, we know that the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Mr. Christopher Luxon, watches this podcast religiously, what would be your one piece of advice to the New Zealand government based on what you're kind of seeing, knowing what you know about where we're at? We're right at the very kind of nexus point of where we're creating the policy that's going to drive the industry forward in New Zealand. What would be your 1, 2, 3 pieces of advice that you'd be giving to our favourite listener? Shout out to Mr. Christopher Luxon. Good to have you with us again, sir.
That's great. I love the question. Because I don't know the sort of nuances of like what is being looked at in New Zealand, etc. I'll probably like try and keep it relatively high level. But there's the one big one is you have to be ready for the change that is happening right now. This is stablecoins, real world asset tokenization. The whole world is moving there quickly. All of the big banks, big asset managers can already do this, and they are currently doing it, and they're just waiting to open the floodgates. There will be a point in time in the next 1 to 2 years where all of a sudden everything is on chain. And if you don't have rules in place that allows your citizens to access that, they will get left behind in just their ability to invest in retirement assets globally. Simple. You've got to think about that. Most countries that are like financial services forward are thinking about it, and they're on that journey. There are so many people that haven't even started that are just going to get left out of like the global investment sort of space. Second thing, don't just jam things into financial services products. There are financial services things that definitely matter. You're talking about shares, you're talking about bonds, that type of stuff. Your old rules work relatively well. Tweak the rules that need to be tweaked so that access is available. But not everything that uses blockchain is a financial product. Make sure there is space for the innovators. Don't have a regulator that will just say anything that is a token that can be traded is a financial product. I'm sorry, it just isn't. Pokemon cards are not financial products. The sleeves that you put a Pokemon card in are not a financial service provider. They're not like a payment service provider. It makes no sense. And so just have like a little bit of like, open-mindedness to realize that innovators will innovate with different mediums. This is just a different medium. It is a way to digitally represent huge amounts of things. That doesn't mean that everything is a financial product. My mouse isn't a financial product. My shoes aren't a financial product. Pokemon cards are not a financial product. And all of the things that are represented digitally are not just all financial products. It doesn't make sense in the real world. It doesn't make sense in the digital world. So have some space for your innovators, because they are the ones that are going to do truly amazing things that will revolutionize just like what your economy is built on. Your economy isn't built on financial services. Financial services are a service. They're not the economy. And then the last thing is like, get out there and chat to, people that are building. Have an understanding of what that is. Talk to global regulators. Understand what's sort of coming around the bend. There are new things happening all the time. And that idea of, this is a technology that sort of crosses all different things is something that you need to grapple with. The idea of agentic payments, like I feel like I've been talking about this for like over a year now, but like it's still considered like brand new and special, etc. Project Bloom, coming out of like the MAS in Singapore, is looking at tokenization of like various assets, but also allowing for real-time agentic payments over the top of them. So this is like AI, blockchain, tokenization, all jammed together into a like, single set of projects. And the MAS is like innovating alongside people like Coinbase with our X402 network, tokenizing, real world assets with DBS and JP Morgan. And it's about liquidity access and multi-currency as well. So they're not just stuck on the Singaporean dollar. They're like, there are a lot of different ways to do currency because like that's the world. The world is like multiple currencies. So yeah, look at those things. Like look at how do I make sure that my citizens continue to have access to like funding and assets around the world? This is tokenization. It is happening now. How do I make space for the innovators that are doing lots and lots and lots of cool things, but not just financial asset stuff? And the third thing is, how do I stay on top of like innovation globally to make sure that I know what's coming around the corner? Like, how do I stay on top of like just understanding where I need to be seeing this regulation? Because if I set something now, it takes a long time to change it. Like, try and be open in whatever you're setting now.
Interesting. There you go. So
some great points here.
You've just schooled the PM, and you'll probably see a few of those bits and pieces come through in the impending upcoming legislation. Now, I know that you're not. You kind of have a very interesting way in which you are approaching this market. So you do a lot of work inside the room, if you like, where you've got the ear of the people who are making these policies and helping drive and help them understand. But you're also a big advocate for what's going on in the other end, which is the consumers of the technology, the consumers of the products and services that are being built on the technology. And I feel very bad that we've kind of left this to the very end, and we probably don't have as much time as we really need to unpack this. Maybe it's the topic for our next conversation more than this one, but I would love to spend a few minutes just talking a little bit about your work with Stand with Crypto and what that is all about. Like, tell it to me like I'm 5, and then let's talk a little bit about where it's at and where it's heading.
Yeah, I mean, simply Stand with Crypto is a way for people to show that they care about crypto and show that their politicians should care about crypto as well. So we have a website, standwithcrypto.org. The one that I'm sort of interacting with the most is standwithcrypto.org/au, so the Australian side of things. And basically you can just sign up and become an advocate for like standing with crypto. It shows your passion and these things matter. So the reason why it matters is because politicians, they care about, the things that we've been talking about the whole time, but they also care about their citizens and votes. And that is like a key thing. If a politician sees that real people care about these things, then they're going to start to listen. They're going to start to try and wrap their heads around it and understand like why people are so passionate. And so rather than just ignoring it and thinking this is all coming in the future and I don't really have to worry about it, they can see that like there are real people are passionate about it now. Stand with Crypto provides a platform to do that. It is like pulling communities together across the world, and especially like within countries, pulling all of the different Web3 communities that we have and like creating a combined voice to give it a little bit more power. So you'll see on the Australian website at the moment, you can basically sign up, and in a handful of clicks, like I think less than 5, you can email your MP and say, hi, I hear that there's some like legislation happening at the moment for regulating digital asset platforms, which is what Australia calls crypto exchanges and stablecoins. Can you please get across this so when it comes like through Parliament next year, you can like provide good feedback, but also vote for like important changes that like protect us as consumers and move our economy forward as Australia. That's a really easy way to interact with your MP, which is fantastic. And around the world, we also do like lots of different events where like MPs will come, they'll speak, they'll talk about like what they are sort of envisaging for the economy and like their sort of roles in the government. And then from there, they'll also like listen to the people that sort of come along and say like, I care about crypto because I'm building this, or, I care about crypto because of, these different things that matter to my life. This is why I think that you should care about it as well. So it is that like movement that allows like, real people to like come together with policymakers and try and get better outcomes for everyone around the world.
Nice.
It's a great initiative.
So will we see a stand with crypto/NZ sometime soon, David?
I would love to. It's a pretty big build out. You might notice on the website we've got every politician sort of in there. I'd like to see it at some point in time. I'm not going to make any promises at any time soon. But the idea is that like we're always pushing this globally. It's a super important movement. There are super advocates like yourselves, but like there are also other people who just want to get involved in small ways, and this is a way that like they can do that as well. So whether it's stand with crypto or whether it's like some version of it that gets done in New Zealand, like it's a really valuable sort of effort to, I guess, like provide a voice for everyone that are both happy to do small actions and large actions like yourselves. And yeah, I'm sure the New Zealand community really appreciates all that you've been doing, especially in Wellington, because I heard that was a really big success.
Well, yeah, and we're going to close with that. So great segue. Yes, I think it's important that it's not just industry that's talking to government about this. This is something that's going to affect every single person on the planet. And
that's
so,
right.
I always joke that decentralization could be the solution or salvation to democracy itself, right? Like, and what you're doing with Stand with Crypto is kind of in that vein in my mind. So I think that it's very important that people pay attention to that, and I would absolutely welcome and love to be a part of bringing that type of activity and momentum to New Zealand. We've been working very hard. Brian, myself, Jeremy, and the team at Blockchain New Zealand have been working very hard in the last year or so to get the attention of government, to get regulators into the room and talking about this stuff, to bring industry into New Zealand, which we've already been sort of successful at doing, and we've now reached that point. So the hard work that we've been doing is starting to pay off, and it would be a really perfect time for the million Kiwis that are out there that are already engaged in this space to kind of step up and say, hey, we give a shit about this too. It's not just these weird like blockchain dudes that are chewing your ear off that care about it, and it's not just a bunch of white guys trying to get rich that care about it. It's something that really does touch every individual in the country.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a great opportunity. It's a great way to sort of provide that. But yeah, I think, everyone in New Zealand thanks you for putting, yourselves on the line and getting all of those relationships kicked off. It's important work. Policy work is not easy. It's hard. It's a little bit confrontational at sometimes, and you'll always feel a little bit out of your depth. So massive kudos to yourselves and Blockchain New Zealand for like undertaking that journey.
David, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan, having learned about Stand with Crypto today, because it sounds like a platform for politicians and their bosses, the voters. And it, there's usually a chasm, right? But you're now really bridging that gap, which is an awesome product. In terms of your conversations, working in crypto policy has probably gotten easier for you because the conversations become a bit more positive. A lot of the myths of yesteryear, like how it's bad for the environment, it's just full of scammers. All of that's kind of been demystified, and we're keen to hear more about your interest in New Zealand at some point, because my thesis, Trevor's and our thesis has always been, at some point, everyone will be exposed to digital assets, whether directly or indirectly through their super or whatever. So definitely these are important conversations right now.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I would love to get across to the Beehive at some stage. Hopefully it works out soon.
Yeah, we'll get you there. And we'd love to see Coinbase, take up a presence in New Zealand, have more of a presence here, and lend their enormous weight to what we're trying to do here for for New Zealand as well. So look, starting with a podcast as something as simple as a conversation and growing from there. I know that I speak on behalf of Brian and myself. We're huge fans of what you guys are doing at Coinbase. It's a real testament to doing it properly and trying to clean up and push the industry forward. So, and I know how, we started here and I'm going to finish here. You are probably one of the busiest men in crypto right now because Coinbase is deep in it all. And certainly in our part of the world, that means that you're the kind of guy in the hot seat. So a big shout out to you, mate, and all the work that you do. I know how many hours you're no doubt putting in, and the hours versus pay kind of response, especially with things like Stand With Crypto, is probably just not even there, and you probably don't even want to think about that. So yeah, look, we just a big shout out to you, mate. Keep pushing. Your impact is felt far beyond what you probably realise, and you are to some extent an inspiration to all the things that we're doing here as well. So thanks for coming on, mate. Been great talking to you.
Appreciate the kind words. Have a great Friday.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween. Yeah, thanks,
All right.
David.
See you.
Awesome session.
Any final words from either of you before we put a bow on it?
Get involved.
Get involved.
Yeah. We didn't really get to drop the alpha from our Wellington trip, Trevor, but I'll add a little bit. I'll do the entree. Maybe you can do the main course. I've been in crypto since 2016, and I've been a crypto lawyer since 2017. When I was doing ICOs in 2017 until really when the US administration turned positive on crypto, the advice has always been avoid the US, just keep things with wholesale investors. But now the mood has changed, and even in New Zealand, that's the same. The conversations with politicians are a lot easier now. They're more educated about the opportunity, about the technology, and I've never had a more positive meeting with politicians than Trevor and I had 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean that says it all, right? I think that's New Zealand's ultimate weapon, and I'm not alone in thinking that. It's great to see that the politicians are turning out, the regulators are in the room, we get access to them. There's nowhere near as much red tape in New Zealand as there probably are in a lot of other jurisdictions, and I think that's a huge advantage to us to move quickly in the space and really make sure that New Zealand gets its fair share of this enormous opportunity. So yeah, very happy with the way things went down in Wellington and the momentum we're building. Looking forward to seeing what the next 6 months looks like as well. So yeah, it's a good time.
So good to hear. Thank you both.
All right, guys. Have a good weekend. See you later, everybody.
See you guys.
See you on the next one where we have another massive